Okay, so I am going to be kind of a little all over the place with this blended learning information. So, kind of some new things I learned and some things I already knew going together with the blended learning model. So, there's 4 different models: the rotational model, which are station rotations, which I know about that. And this just says that you include one of the stations as an online option. So that counts. With a lab, you can do some online learning. It also includes the flipped classroom where you, which I already knew about, where they do kind of the learning part or the lesson at home watching a video. And then when they're in class, they're doing more of the work, like the homework. So it's kind of the opposite. And then the individual rotation where you're scheduling kind of based on your individual students' needs, which sounds kind of neat, but kind of a pain. And then the next one is the flex model, which has online content and students can move through on an individual basis. Kind of it's more customized to them. And then the self-blend model where they have some regular classes and some online classes. So kind of what we're doing, I guess. And then the enriched virtual model, which sounds like it's a whole school thing with time happening in the classroom and then also online. So those being labeled is kind of a learning thing, but some of the things inside of that I already knew. And then, so from the effects of blended learning article, it says, one of the quotes is the combining of the 2 different educational models, traditional face-to-face learning and distance learning. So one of my questions is for blended learning, just based on that, does the online portion need to be done outside of the classroom for it to be considered blended learning? I think I saw B brought up earlier that, like, what about the kids that don't have internet? Like, isn't this a equity thing? And so does it count if the online portion is still in class? Does that still count as blended learning? Which, I mean, with the rotation model where it says that you're doing station rotations and one station is online, that makes me think that it's fine to have an online portion in class. But the effects of blended learning article specifically commented on it being distance learning. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting in both the Education Week Spotlight on Blended Learning and the effects of blended learning, they both talked about how measurements of success weren't really significantly different than regular learning. Maybe they didn't have enough data yet, or there just wasn't that much of a difference. So I just kind of thought that was interesting that there's these articles about this great new style of learning, but they don't have any evidence that it's doing anything different. Let's see. So in the education, the Spotlight on Blended Learning article, it says some evidence that centers of innovation, one of their schools, increased school choice options are working in a holistic sense. So this is talking about that they don't really have any evidence that it's making a difference, but they see it working in a holistic sense, which is great. And it's kind of one of those things that annoys me about charter schools in that they can say things like that, whereas a public school has to actually have evidence to prove that something is working. Just a comment there. In the blended learning choices, one of the quotes that I thought was interesting, the More research is needed to determine its effectiveness, including best practices and which models work best for which type of students. I guess that kind of goes with what I was just talking about, that there's not really a lot of evidence yet about whether this works and what the best way to do it is. And then, so in that same article, the blended learning choices, they talked about the blended rotational model, which is a rotation between group work, online coursework, and face-to-face instruction, which I like that. But I'm just wondering about how does that work for timing? Like, is it a rotation by day? So one day you're doing one thing, one day you're doing the next thing, and that rotates? Or is it within a class period that there's a certain amount, you're spending 20 minutes in the group work, 20 minutes in the face-to-face instruction, 20 minutes on the coursework? That's something that I've tried to do, kind of a station thing in my classes, and I find that it's hard to time it, each thing, that it takes the same amount of time so that kids aren't just sitting around waiting for the other group to finish. So I'm just kind of curious about that. And then another quote from the article, students work through playlists of resources, including online curriculum and videos from Khan Academy. Kind of more my question with this is, do you guys have any specific resources of like videos that you like to use? This says Khan Academy, and I know my mentor teacher hates Khan Academy, so I like never use it. He's always commenting about how it has wrong information and he doesn't like it. So I'm just curious if you have other sources that you like to use. Just as a comment, in our class, we like to we do quite a bit of blended learning, actually. One of the things that we do fairly regularly is a web quest, where we assign them this sort of worksheet in Google Classroom, and it has different videos or links for them to go to get information to answer the questions that we ask. And I find like they seem to like doing it. I've asked them after finishing if they find that it's helpful, and they say yes, that they like having different videos to watch because it's, a different way of explaining something. But it also seems like sometimes they don't manage their time very well. They end up chit-chatting with each other and not completing their work because there's nobody right there like talking to them, like it's all online, so they can just finish it at home if they want. So that's some kind of a struggle that I have with that. Today in my anatomy class, we did a blood testing lab, but because they were testing their own blood, we had to have a permission slip from parents, and about probably a third of the class didn't get that. And so I had an online virtual lab for them to do blood testing on. So that was another example of using this. So I think we use it pretty regularly in our classroom, but we don't typically use it away. Like it's still used in the classroom, and that's partially because a lot of our students don't have internet access at home, so we don't want to offer or make them do extra homework that they aren't able to do. So that's all I have to say about that.